Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, since the Republicans announced that their top legislative priority in this Congress would be to rip away health care from millions of Americans, I have come down to the floor many times to beg them to reconsider. I've shared stories about families in Massachusetts who gained quality health care coverage for the first time after the passage of the Affordable Care Act. I've shared statements and letters from hospitals and doctors in Massachusetts talking about the incredible difference that health care coverage makes for the patients who walk through their doors. I've also shared many, many stories from parents with children who have complex medical needs, all of those children depending on Medicaid. Now, I know that families and doctors and hospitals and nursing homes and patients lying in their hospital beds haven't just been sharing their stories with me. They have been begging every Republican in the Senate to listen to them as well. People shared their stories because they want to make a difference. These are stories of families we represent. They are our reason that we are here in the Senate. They are supposed to be our guiding light for the choices we make and the way we vote. Senate Republicans who voted yesterday to move forward with their effort to rip away Americans' health care are not listening to the people they represent. Their vote was irresponsible. It was reckless. It was cruel. It was immoral. But more than that, this was a vote that is not who we are as a country. Let's be very clear about what's happening on the floor of the Senate right now. 50 Republicans have voted to open debate on a series of bills, each of which would have devastating effects for health care in this country. Now, the Republicans don't know which of these bills will actually be the ones they'll be asked to vote on. Only some of the bills have been analyzed by the number crunchers over at the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, to estimate exactly how many people would be kicked off insurance and how high premiums would go up. But every version that the CBO did examine over the last few weeks was really ugly. Tens of millions of people losing their coverage and costs skyrocketing for millions more. The latest plan that Senator McConnell has been floating behind the scenes would have Republicans ultimately vote on what is called, quote, a skinny repeal bill. This bill would make a limited set of changes to the Affordable Care Act, just the important stuff. And what's important to Senator McConnell? Well, it seems to be the part of the Affordable Care Act that makes the health insurance system actually work. Because the skinny bill would repeal the parts of the ACA that say that everyone needs health insurance coverage. This is the individual mandate. Republican leadership is telling their members that if they vote for this skinny bill, they can hammer out the rest of the details in conference with the House of Representatives. But make no mistake, this isn't a more moderate version of the Republicans' ugly plan to repeal the Affordable Care Act. This isn't compromise. In fact, this may be the worst idea they've had yet. Because if Senate Republicans vote to repeal the individual mandate, they're getting rid of the linchpin of the insurance markets in this country. And that's because this provision, the one that the Republicans want to junk, is what keeps the price of insurance affordable for people with pre-existing conditions. Now, don't just take my word for it. Independent experts have looked at what would happen if the Republicans repeal the individual mandate. And boy, it is not pretty. Just yesterday, the American Academy of Actuaries, these are the experts who study how insurance works. They do that for a living. These are numbers, folks. They wrote a letter to the Senate leadership begging them not to go forward with this reckless plan. They wrote that eliminating this part of health law, quote, would likely have significant implications for health care coverage and costs, both to consumers and the federal government. They said that it would, quote, lead to premium increases. It would, quote, weaken insurer solvency. Let me just do the translation on that. The actuaries, those are the professionals who study insurance for a living, are saying that what the Senate Republicans are thinking of voting on is a provision to jack up insurance costs through the roof and rip away coverage from those who can't afford to pay those higher costs. We should be very clear about consequences here. If the Republicans go through with that vote, if they go through with that vote, Senate Republicans will be responsible for every dollar of premium increases that occur over the weeks and months that follow as this bill sits in a conference with the House and insurance companies jack up prices because they don't know what they might be required to cover. Senate Republicans will be responsible for every single person who has to drop coverage because they can't afford those price increases. The Senate Republicans will be responsible for every single person who didn't go to the doctor when they needed to or didn't schedule surgery when they needed to because they no longer had health insurance. And Senate Republicans will be responsible for every family in this country that misses a mortgage payment or that can't pay their electricity bill or that's forced into bankruptcy because their medical debts have become too big ever to pay off. You know, every time I come to the floor to talk about this terrible Republican bill, I have said I am ready to work on a bipartisan proposal that will actually improve health care in this country. And I say it again, I am still ready to do that. But we cannot move forward while Senate Republicans are still trying to take away health care coverage for millions of Americans and drive up costs for millions more. The Republicans seem to think they can wear us down, that they can keep us here until we get too tired or we give up or just give in. But boy, that's where they're wrong. They don't have a clue what they're up against because we're fighting for families. We're fighting for little kids. We're fighting for our neighbors. We're fighting for parents and brothers and sisters and loved ones. We're fighting for the American people. And when you fight for the American people, the wind is always at your back. Your heart is always strong. So Democrats will be here fighting for as long as it takes to beat back these shameful health care bills. We hear the American people. We hear you, we are on your side, and we will never give up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.